We're going to be talking through today's 13-game MLB slate. Hope you all have a good Friday, or having a good Friday. Had a good week. Been an interesting week DFS wise. Other than the big night, I played one big night with the 1500 where they had the 1500 250K for first. That was a losing night. Other than that, it's been a pretty decent week for me over here. Had a good basketball night again last night. Cashed pretty deep in the 555 with my only entry in there. Showdown didn't do as great, but still not too bad. And ready to get into it for today. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to talk through the baseball slate. I'm going to be doing a basketball slate right after this because it's a weird start time. It's 5:30 Eastern for basketball. It's just doesn't work for me to go live because I actually had plans otherwise. I sort of assumed that most games would be starting at 7 Eastern. So it kind of threw me off a little bit. So when you guys get in here, please click the like and subscribe. Remember, we've got a bunch of great deals going on and a bunch of awesome free trials as well for the SaberSim Ultimate package. It gives basically everything SaberSim has, all of Sheets' projections, all of Goldie's projections, all of my content, all of Rody's content, all of Brandon Cruz for NASCAR and for Showdown and all that. So a lot of good stuff. So I hope you guys check that out. We're going to go game by game with this baseball slate. There's only one game on the slate that has weather concerns. It's the White Sox game. I'll just mention that beforehand. And it looks like a fair bit of concern, but still expected to play at this moment. It's still early in the day, but again, definitely some chance that it doesn't. So with that said, I'm sharing my screen. We're going to talk through starting off with Oakland and Baltimore. So on two very different levels, I think both these pitchers are playable. I'm very confused by this Ross Stripling, his ownership and projections. He's bouncing all over the place today. I don't really understand why Stripling would get that high of a projection, but I actually think that he was a guy I was going to consider anyway. There's the double spend down pitchers, there's the spend down pitchers and there's the spend up pitchers. Corbin Burns is one of the spend up pitchers I like. Ross Stripling is one of the spend down pitchers I like. However, where I'm not using Stripling, I absolutely am on board with a low owned Baltimore stack. They're expensive and it's going to keep people off of them. I really, really like this stack. I want to get ahead on Baltimore. I believe this to be. So the teams you're going to hear me talk about are Baltimore, the Dodgers, Texas, Atlanta, and you're going to hear me just regurgitate that out over and over again. I feel like these teams are the offenses, to some extent the Yankees, but I don't feel that strongly quite about the Yankees offense for the whole season as I do about Baltimore, Texas, Dodgers, and Atlanta. But I do love Baltimore. So anyway, I do love Baltimore today. Very high on them. They are, again, I will have some Stripling to balance it out, but I'm definitely high on that. So we've got Bassett and Stone here for. I actually think I have more respect for Bassett than maybe most people do. It's also not a bad Toronto bullpen. It's going to be, you're going to get some ownership on the Dodgers. It's funny because Bassett is completely owned Ohtani, but Ohtani is of course going to be owned because he's awesome and he's always owned. And the Dodgers are going to get some love today, even in a tough matchup against Bassett, because there aren't those quote unquote super obvious stacks. It's still not going to be enough to where I will ignore it. And I think that you could make a decent case against Stone and the Dodgers to at least get pieces of Toronto. I think both of these sides are totally interesting. Stone hasn't been anything special, and Toronto, while their offense has struggled, they're now affordable enough. I totally could talk myself into a little bit of Toronto, but neither of these teams quite make the priority list for me. The Dodgers are obviously closer to it, but I do think that they're both interesting to get a little bit off the board, especially in the case of Toronto. Washington, Miami, obviously game is played in the Dome. We have Trevor Williams and basically a bullpen game from Miami. I probably am just going to leave this whole game alone. Now, could we make an argument for Trevor Williams? Could we make an argument for the Miami stack? I think so. I think we could for Miami more so. I like Miami's better than I do Washington. And Washington actually is getting some ownership, as you can see, partially because of the pricing. I'm not going to argue with playing Jacob Young leading off at 2,700. So I kind of get it. I guess both of these teams have to stay on my list just because of how cheap they are. More for secondary stacks. So that's sort of the way I'm going to treat these, as being open to them as secondary stacks, not necessarily for the full 5-man. I just don't feel like you're getting enough punch on a 13-game slate out of these two teams often enough to where I want a 5-man. But I definitely can get behind. Maybe you do like a Young, and Abrams is expensive, but again, you balance it out with Young, and it equals out to be pretty reasonable. Throw in Ruiz or, if Vargas is somewhere else in the lineup today, maybe you could do that as a 3-man, maybe Sanchez, Jazz, or De La Cruz on the other side. I do think there's some interesting bats here, but overall, not quite making the ultimate priority list for me as of yet. Mets in St. Louis, two of the, what do we call this? The battle of the gutless, according to every other show. So Budo and Mikolas. Budo's on my list, very far down it. Just a guy to consider against a St. Louis team that's struggling. And Mikolas is on my list because he's 5,500. We know Mikolas, hasn't been nearly the same, hasn't been nearly as good this year, but has shown like he can still be efficient. And when he finds his stuff again, he should have his control back. And the Mets have been bad enough to where I'm absolutely open to playing Mikolas at 5,500 here. I'm just going to take a quick look at the K projection. You only have 4 for Mikolas. That's pretty damn low. And I'll take the over on the 4, but still, I don't know if I would. It's pretty close. Mikolas 5,500 is definitely kind of interesting. I'm not getting to the bats in this game. Neither is anyone else, for what it's worth. If you wanted to take a shot here, no one's going to be doing it. When you have pitchers that people aren't going to play and no one wants to play the bats, I always think it's kind of interesting. It's only 53 degrees in New York, but there is 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to left. So don't mind it. Just personally didn't get there myself. Okay, moving on to Chicago, Boston. Not a great hitting day in Boston, for what it's worth. Looking at the weather right now, 51 degrees. Wind sort of across the field, but somewhat blowing in from right. Only 6 miles an hour, so nothing crazy, but 51 degrees. Both teams have a 3.75 run total. You could see SaberSim thinks it's more. I would bet the over on that 7.5 combined total. I didn't get to either of these pitchers, and I didn't get to any of the bats here. Maybe that's something I'm going to reconsider later because you got Pablo Reyes really cheap, Bobby Dahlbeck. There's some pieces here I don't mind, but nothing that quite, honestly, nothing quite makes the priority list for me. So I'm not too high on that one. All right, moving over to Cleveland, Atlanta, you've got Chris Sale and Logan Allen. So the problem is it's 75 degrees in Atlanta, but you do have 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing in from center. I do think that Atlanta is always in play, and today is really no different. You should have Duvall in the lineup because of the lefty on the mound for Cleveland. Obviously always some pinch hit risk with those guys. But my guess is Atlanta's lineup comes out pretty standard tonight, and with Duvall batting 6th or 7th. So I'm okay with them. Chris Sale is on my list, but he's further down than Gallen and Burns. I don't mind it if you want to go there. I don't love picking on Cleveland. They've been really, really good so far, and Chris Sale has been a little bit of both. We've seen the good, and we've seen him look a little bit shaky, even in some of the outings that the numbers look good. I don't think he's always looked as good as his numbers do. So that's just sort of my quick thoughts on Sale. But open to it. Would rather get up to Burns or Gallen myself. Okay, let's move on to this. This is the game with the weather where we have to be concerned about. I'll tell you what, if there's no weather concerns, I call BS on this projection. Yeah, that Goldie's got it closer to accurate. This looks more like a Zach Eflin projection than the other. You've also got Goldie has him a little bit higher owned. I think Eflin and if this game was a go, and Sale are pretty similar. I don't really have like a strong take, and I think that completely the Tampa Bay side would be in play as a stack. But again, I'm not going to mess with weather on a 13-game slate, so we'll have to revisit that one at 6 Eastern. All right. Moving over to Texas, Cincinnati at Texas. Okay, so here is you got Eovaldi at that high of ownership. I have him on my list, but I don't know that I really want to do it. I do want to do the Texas thing. That stack sort of sits the best with me of any of the ones we mentioned. Now they're going to be they're expensive, but I just love this offense. Everybody right in here. At least we have nobody at 6K. See Seekers under 6K, which is nice. You can play Jonah Heim, and then we don't really have a serious value. That's the issue with the Texas stack. So it is hard to play. You might need to use the spend down pitchers to do it, but I like Texas a ton. I'm just going to do a couple of dots here because these are going to be. Again, if you can get them in, I want to try to get these guys in. And they are the stack I like the most of any of the ones we've mentioned so far. And I don't mind Eovaldi especially if you're playing with the Texas stack, because then pitching with a lead, Eovaldi can be better even. But I just think there's other options that I like a little bit better than Eovaldi at the moment. And I don't even mind getting to some reds here. I don't think you need to on this slate. If there was a little bit of value, I would love to attack it. It's just a little pricey. But I do think that taking some shots against Eovaldi is not the worst idea in the world for a team that hits fastballs pretty well. All right, moving on to New York and Milwaukee. And obviously don't have to worry about this game in a dome. Luis Gil is going to have some ownership. He is on my list. Again, he is further down, doesn't make the priority side. Colin Ray in what turns into a semi-bullpen-ishy game. You don't usually want to stack against that. I could talk myself into the Yankees today. I'm not, again, further down the list for me, but certainly don't mind it. It is after traveling from being at home and all that stuff. Sure, not those teams tend to perform slightly worse than average, but the Yankees, are interesting enough to where I think they deserve to stay on the list, but not necessarily move up any higher than that. Alan says Josh Smith. Sure, Josh Smith, Texas, in your Texas stacks. I didn't tag him as a priority play, but he's not. You're right. He is the cheapest one, but we're used to like Josh Smith. We were paying like 2.3K for the last couple of years. So it feels like when you see 3.3, it's like, where did that come from? No, it's been because he's been really good. All right, or he's had some good games, I should say. I am going to say that as of right now, I'm confused about this Bailey Ober projection. I'm confused about this whole situation. Now, I guess it's because the winds are blowing out 20 miles an hour, but I would have thought both of these pitchers should be heavily in play. I actually had Ober as a priority, and even with the wind, I think I'm still going to have Ober there. I'm going to see what the K-prop, we've got him at 5.67, not like amazing, but 68,800. I think we gamble there. I think I am going to play some Ober, and the weather does concern me just a little bit, just because it's only 64 degrees, but it is 20 mile an hour winds blowing out. That's pretty serious for Southern California. If you can't tell, my sinuses should always tell you how the weather is down in Southern California, because during this time of year, I get really, really bad allergy season. Patrick Sandoval is mildly interesting, and so are the Minnesota a little bit to me. Sandoval is a sort of an all over the place guy. We know that we can get those 5 walk games from him where he gives up 3 home runs, and then other times he looks completely lights out. So he's a wild card pitcher, and you have a Minnesota team that is uncomfortable to play because you look at the hitters and literally, like, I could say like Vasquez, Farmer, Martin, Miranda, Margot, all may not be in the lineup, by the 6th inning. That's how many guys they platoon. Now, some of them will be, but I'm just throwing it out there. They're going to play these guys, and they are more than happy to switch and go to their bench as quickly as they possibly can. So that's the concern. The cost, though, might outweigh the concern. I am absolutely all over the idea of getting into to some of the hitting in this game. So I'm this is the game I think I'm the most wishy-washy on. I like Ober, I like Sandoval, and I like the idea of getting to some of the Minnesota bats for value. So I do think Ober, though, is my favorite part of the game at the moment. I might reconsider that a little bit later if we find a better weather spot or something like that. All right, Nola. Have we just given up on Aaron Nola? No one's going to play him. Okay. I have Nola in the same category, a little below Burns and Gallen, but I don't have him as unplayable. And Musgrove at 7,400 has been terrible. I'd love to try to pick on him again, and I think that's not the worst idea. But he's 7,400. Like, I don't know. I think both of these pitchers, I don't think these ownerships are accurate. I don't think the projections are accurate. We'll see later on today, but I do think that these are two pitchers you can get different with. I know it's a big slate, so I know I'm mentioning a lot of things. I'll try to tighten it up here at the end, but I do think both of those pitchers are interesting, and I didn't get to the bats. Maybe you could talk me into a Philly stack. Pretty big stadium downgrade for most of the stadiums Philly plays at are much better hitters parks than San Diego. It's only 59 degrees in San Diego today, crossed winds, nothing special there. Zach Gallen against Seattle, high strikeout team, absolutely like it. I think right now he would be the guy I would be most comfortable spending up for. And Emerson Hancock, who I believe is actually talented and may actually get, I thought he would get a little bit of ownership at first just because we don't know what's going to happen with him yet, but it is Arizona. I don't really want to mess with Arizona in general. Not really getting to the hitting in this game at all, to be honest with you. And then we close it out with Pittsburgh at San Francisco. You've got Priester and Harrison on the mound. Priester, look at the projection versus the point total. At 5,200, I think that's a guy you could certainly consider. Look, 5,200, you get these prices. It allows you to play the Texases. We know that they'll at least let Priester go out there. We've seen San Francisco at times struggle. They haven't really seen Priester. I think they may have seen him once before. Kyle Harrison is on the outside looking in for me. But overall, not a game I want to do a ton with. Maybe you could talk me into a giant stack, but I don't think I need to with all that I have here. So I have Gallen and Ober as my top two pitchers right now. I have Texas, Baltimore as my sort of favorite stacks, honestly. But I think I'm going to get some more Minnesota, at least as a mini stack. And I think I'm going to, possibly get to some Dodgers and some Yankees as well. Joey Bart revenge game. LOL. I don't even know if Joey Bart's playing today. We'll find out that one, I guess, a little bit later. But I'll be live at 6 Eastern to sort of tighten things up. This is where I'm at for right now. I'll get my core and stuff like that up for the users. I'll get all my early builds, etc., as well as my basketball stuff, which we're going to do a basketball one in just a little bit. So stay tuned for that. And good luck today.